call the Public Safety Building Committee meeting to order. It's February 12th. We'll just run around the table real quick, introduce so everyone knows who we are. My name's John Hayden. I'm the chairman of the committee.
Bill Mazur. Jack Steiner.
Brian Knudstein.
Tom Grella.
Wayne Young.
Bill Blaze. Jeff Bunce.
All right. First item tonight, we're going to take a peek at the minutes. Everybody have a chance to review minutes from the last meeting? Do you have any amendments or content changes that?
Make a motion to approve. I'd second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Third item on the agenda, we have some guests here tonight. Talk about the design build process, Jack. Is that
That's right. And different style contracts as well.
okay?
You guys want to come here, these two open seats here? You know, or handout too. It's kind of quickly summarizing the different kind of contract types we go into for construction projects. So I don't know, we can be this brief or go into as much depth as you guys want to see, and what I'll start with your guys' questions and how familiar you are, the different types of options. And
For the meeting minutes, do you just mind introducing yourselves?
yeah, no problem. So I'm Ben Middleton, work for Martini Northern, general contractor here in town.
Peter Middleton. I'm the president of our company. As you probably all know, Jack works for us. And I think that's the reason why we're here. Jack asked us to give you a sort of a brief description of the three different methods that there are for contracting for building a building. So Ben put together this little handout. And basically we can go through it pretty easily, but basically there's pretty much three different methods that are used in our industry right now. There's they call a design bid build. So that entails present drawings by the architect, engineers, civil engineers. Then you send it out to some selected contractors. They bid it. Then you select the guy. So that's one method. Then there's the construction management process, and that is basically you select your contractor, your architect. Usually you get along a little ways with them, and then you select a construction manager. That method is a little different. I'll let Ben explain these a little bit more in depth. And then the last one is a design build. There you have one point of contact with the team. So generally it's led by the contractor. So that's the three methods. And maybe Ben, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into it for you guys, so we can give you the pros and cons.
Yeah. So I guess while we're on design build, that's the first one I had on this list, and just the pros of that is your one contract, right? So you'd have the designer and the builder under a single contract. It helps kind of in tandem as you're designing it, budgeting the project at the same time. So allows for fast tracking there. So you'd have early cost certainty. The cons, the architect and builder working as a team. So you might feel as an ownership that you'd have less control, but it's just important that you guys just stay as involved as you can throughout that process, and you'd have as much control as you'd like. And then, the people think you have limited competitive bidding, but it's important to remember that the contractor, like the general contractor, is still bidding that out to the subs, which is where the majority of your changes, or like not your changes, but your costs coming from.
90% of the contract value is by subcontractors. 10% left over for sort of general conditions, a few other things.
Yeah. The construction management approach. this method helps, allows you to go under contract with an architect early on, get the design well underway. And then during that process, simultaneously, you hire a construction management firm separately, but to help budget as you go as well. So just a different style. And the contractor has less input on the design, just helping the budget be put together that way. Both the design build and the construction management is typically like an open book, so it's a guaranteed maximum price contract. So you'd have all the backup with your invoicing, and you guys would see all the subcontracts. So therefore, it creates like a much more team atmosphere than in the third option would be the lump sum design build. That's how towns often go about projects, is they'll select the lowest bidder, but that's a closed book, right? So if under that contract, the invoice is line items, and you bill against that line item, and that's it. So there's no backup really shown for that. So few different ways to go about it, but I'm happy to take questions on it.
So if I can jump in, so for you all in this group, you understand that there's the selection process. Now you come together. So for the design build method, you're going to meet once and you're going to select one group with both the CM and the lump sum build. You'd have to meet twice. You get RFPs out to those two groups, and then you're gonna meet, decide on who you want to go forward with. Most of the RFPs are usually put out by the town, and in the CM process, the architect can help you develop that RFP. In the design build, you would have to generate that RFP that's going to go out to select contractors for your design build. On the lump sum, it's the same thing. You have two entities that you're dealing with. So you have two contracts. In two of those, you have two contracts. It's going to take you twice as long, obviously, to get that team on board. I don't know that speed is necessary on this one. Obviously, the bigger part here is getting you to the March vote, right? So you gotta come up with a scenario that works for you for getting you to getting you in front of the town. Then they approve it, right? And then us in the construction industry, we always know that in March, well, you can either go up or down depending on how the vote always goes. So it's every town does it. So it's a process that we all go through. Some years it passes and some years it doesn't. And to get to that March vote, you need a little bit of money to get just a little bit of design done. So people can look at an elevation of the building, look at a floor plan of the building, get an idea of what they're voting for. Usually you have a meeting around this time of year, right? That you go out to everybody and, you show them the pretty pictures and say, and you have an idea of what the cost should be. It doesn't have to be the exact amount, but it should give you a close approximity of what the final cost will be. Obviously, as all of those processes get through that March vote and it goes forward, then you dig it and get the project going. That's when the process speeds up on a design build process. You'll get from the March vote to when you start construction faster. The other two take a little bit more time. The CM process also is fairly quick, and the good part about both the design build and the CM process is you get some cost input as you go along. Versus if you did the design bid build, you're gonna expend all of your money on your design. You're gonna get that all done, and then you're gonna go out to bid and hope that it comes in where it should be. not necessarily knowing, whereas on both of the other processes, you'll have cost input along the way. So, much different. And I can tell you, the design build process, some people will tell you that's the best way to go, and it's the least expensive, but not necessarily at the end of the job is that cost the least expensive, because that's a process where if the I isn't dotted and the T isn't crossed, you don't get the I or the T crossed. So it makes it a little bit more adversarial. It's not quite as team building as the other two processes are.
So with all three processes, how would they, like, let's say they sort of go, whatever the timeline is, it would go to next March.
Right.
As far as plans, would all three processes have the same process, to have the same plans that would go before the town, or there'd be a variation in those?
So before the town,
Conceptual versus
Right.
blueprints or something?
yeah, you're gonna have a very conceptual plan before you go to the town. You gotta invest a little bit of money. I think you haven't picked a site yet either, right? There's no site, so obviously that takes a little bit of engineering, civil side. So typically when you go to, it's almost like going in front of the planning board, right? So you have to have a little bit of design done and a little bit of the civil engineering done. So when you come to in front of the planning board, they've got an idea of what you're doing. So I would say that the plans are roughly the same as that conceptual. Yeah, very conceptual. And then once it's voted in, great. If it's not, well, you wait till next year and you usually go in front. But once the March vote is done, the acceleration is faster on two of those than the design. So two of them are team orientated around trying to give you the best product that you can for the money that you want to spend. Usually the owner has a rough idea of, okay, am I a $5 million project or am I a $2 million project? What size we think we can get past town? And from there, you start to size up your building to that. So it's important that that you're given a preliminary budget of some kind.
So from a municipal versus private sector project, right? So this is probably going to go to town vote and all that. As far as something that needs to be approved and, follow guidelines and all that. As far as going up to bid, I think we all understand what, the low bid and the other design bid build process is. But as far as the differentiation between that and design build, does that still go out to bid? Or is it just RFPs and you select a contractor and move forward?
So both of those two methods are usually RFPs, both the CM and design build. You'll generate an RFP. You'll get it out to whomever you want. You can advertise it publicly. I think we just got one for was it Freeport or where was it?
Falmouth, DPW? Yeah.
DPW.
They're going out to, well, no, but it's an RFP though, it's to open RFP.
Right, yeah, so it's an RFP, but it's out publicly,
Mhm.
right? So that's the difference.
And a lot of times what happens is, you'll review those RFPs and then maybe you'll make a short list and bring in that, like your three top choices for, a closer interview to see how they best fit your needs for the project and how that looks.
So with the design build, say, and I'm only using you guys as.
Yeah.
And you get an architect, you guys work with an architect, you put it out to bid, you get your bids, you give the town a $3,600,000, number. Now, down the road, if there's a problem, say the architect didn't count on something or something happened, does that go back on you, or is the town still liable for change orders on that, even though you guys were the design team?
So both the CM and the design build usually carry what we call a contingency. So there's a bucket of money there that if something was missed and wasn't fully carried, and I always use the same example, is that the architect on his set of plans, he drew a nice upper cabinet, lower cabinets, nice, and then you put a light underneath it, right? But the electrical engineer didn't pick up that light,
Oh, yeah.
right? So the electricians that are all bidding it, they're not going to add that in because then they'd be higher than the next guy, right? So they're not, and I'm hoping that we would have picked it up, we would have noticed that, oh, they missed it, but sometimes we don't. And so that's what we would use a contingency item for. So that would cover that cost. So there's no impact to the town on that item. But there unfortunately in our business, there's always change orders. And nobody likes them. But no project is perfect. Okay. Let's understand that from the beginning. So every one of those methods can have change orders for it. The design bid build has no contingency. So anything that's not shown there, you guys own. So that's where it gets a little bit tougher versus on the other two, it's more of a team effort. So we try and, 90% of the time before we submit a bid, and if we're part of a CM, we'll go over it with the architect first before we even sit down with the owner to make sure that we have covered items. And if there was a line drawn on the drawing and you don't, okay, it's just a line. What is it? Well, maybe it happened to be in the break room, right? And so it's really it's a countertop. So those are the kind of things you try and vet out before you submit your bid. So there's that collaboration between the architect and the contractor in both of those methods, and more so in the design build, because on the design build, you in theory don't need as much design done because there's an understanding between the two teams of what we're building. So the design costs are typically less in the design build process than they are in the CM process. The CM process, they try and really get to the end and give you 100%, what they always call 100% drawings. But we all know that there's never 100% drawings. It's impossible. But the change orders, they happen. And typically in the two methods, the design, build, CM, change orders are really driven by, number one, what you don't see, which is usually under the ground. All right. So that's always a variable. If you happen to pick a site,
Do change order.
right? Jericho, exactly. That's you. So, but you can understand all of a sudden you're digging and boom, you hit like a big rock or a big piece of ledge that you had no idea was there. So that's one area. And then the other areas is owner driven changes. You guys decide along the way, well, geez, we'd like to have granite countertops versus plastic laminate. So that's a change, and it's that comes out of your budget and contingency. The last one is changes or errors in the drawings. If there's clearly an error, usually it's on the two methods. It's usually picked up by the CM under contingency, but on the other one, there's no, that's what you get. You get to pay for it. So it's,
Peter, how is that contingency derived? Is it like a percentage of the whole, or is it base? It is.
yeah.
So
Usually, so as you again, in both of those, the two methods that have it, usually our first go around on an estimate, our contingency may be 10%. Okay. But as the design builds, and I did this little diagram for you, it's a triangle as the design and the budget start working, the idea is to work towards the pinnacle. So at the end, when we're done with the design period, everything meets in the middle there. And in theory, we have all the cost and all the design that you want. And so, but the contingency, it will reduce down. normal for us is the 5% contingency going forward. And again, in both of those methods, it's usually considered savings. So there's the contract. So I'll talk a little bit about the contract. And the contract that you have in the CM and the design build are pretty similar. There's one point of contact for both of those, although the design's underneath the other one, but it doesn't really matter that much. But what both of those have contingencies, have savings clause. So at the end, there's usually in the contract, it's written, you know, is the savings clause 75-25, because as we go through the final purchase of like the dirt guy, right? You talk to him and you make sure he's got everything, and sometimes his number may go up, but sometimes he may have some stuff in there that we say, oh, well, no, we've got that covered over here, so he can reduce his price. And so that creates a little bucket of money as we go through. And that's typical of all divisions. There's 16 divisions and there's several, 30 contractors in each one. So the
Where's
project.
the bucket of money go to at the end if it's not?
So that's considered savings at the end. So we, as we go through the process month by month, we can update you onto what's considered savings. But we don't release that amount because sometimes we have to use that. Maybe there was savings in the earthwork, but guess what? We overran on the drywall. So we have to shift that money around to make sure that we come out whole. In the CM process, it's called a GMP. I think you guys guaranteed maximum price is what you come up with. So down the bottom. So that's what the CM is saying, is he guarantees that amount of money and the scope that he's identified. We all have drawings, and that's basically drawings and specs, and that's so on the design build, it's usually a lump sum, but there's savings clauses, same thing with the contingency. So at the end, for instance, we did a project for the town of Dover. Oh, it was a long time ago. I did it. Jack was super there. At the beginning of the project, we couldn't afford air conditioning in the building. But as we were going through it, we created enough savings that we could put air conditioning into it. It was a big deal. It was a big cooling tower. We actually changed the design a little bit, moved the cooling tower closer to where it had to be, and made some renovations. And we went to the committee like this, and we said, yeah, I think we have enough money to give you AC and not affect the guaranteed maximum price. And it worked. So that doesn't always happen. Now, it was a fairly large, and I forget where we found the savings, but we found the savings somewhere, and it worked. So there's those items that can play in both of those methods, but not in your hard bid. I don't mean to downplay hard bid because it's used a lot, but it's just not as friendly, honestly. So.
You mentioned early on about needing a little bit of money to keep going on some of the design work. That was a question that we all sort of talked about, and how that would play out if, you were contracted as a design build, say, but the town, voted it down, and then, is there money that's paid to have a design done? Is it at what level? Who owns that? At what point? Like, how does that process work when you're dealing with a municipality? Because we can only make what recommendations, and ultimately put that forward to the select board. They'll be the ones to make the final decisions about, what gets put on a warrant, or, that type of stuff. So it was just a question we were all kind of kicking around, like what happens, like who pays for that? How does that work? What's,
Yeah, you need a little bit. Yeah, you need a little bit of money up front.
Okay.
You need a little bit of money up front to make it all happen. But usually there's an incentive for the team to keep that as low as they can because they want the job to go forward. So we don't, but again, it's not unusual to spend $10,000 or $15,000 on civil engineering, same thing on architectural, get some renderings and get some floor plans made out and that kind of stuff. So, but it does take some money up front. You have to have a little bit to make it go forward.
You ever break up the design build part? Like I'm thinking if we end up finding a location and we, coordinate for the civil side of it, would you do the rest or do you always just have to do the whole thing in-house as a design build? Like, would you make it so that your civil, your, architectural, all the things happen within?
I
So-
guess,
Well, like if,
So I think you could hire to do your initial investigations, you could reach out to whoever you guys think would be good services. And then you could still entertain potentially those guys, or if you're not happy with their services so far, you could still go to
I mean, we're kind of doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to interrupt. But, we're working in that direction,
Yeah.
To try to determine feasibility on some,
Mhm.
parcels within the town, but it was more a question of whether or not, we as a committee may have the ability to do, say, the site development portion of it, but not the construction part. That's all. I was just sort of trying to understand if it was ever a split in that design build, or if it was like, had to go all in, on that.
so would you be undertaking sort of the civil side?
I'm just saying that there might be a potential that the committee could manage that aspect of the site plan, of the development of the parcel part of it, not necessarily the construction part, but, and again, it's just a random question. It's not really a known thing or something we're thinking of doing. It was just, how would that work?
Yeah, so the civil relates a lot to the architectural, so they're gonna have to coordinate at some point.
Right.
But, if you decide to, we've done where you come in, there's a pad for you, right? Then you start your building. So most of the civil's already done. You got your utilities already on site. You're just connecting into them. Most of that's done, but not very often. That's more for like the big box stores where those guys know, they know to the penny what that building costs them. They don't know what the site costs them though. So that's always the big variable is what's the site cost for them. But they can tell you to the penny what that Home Depot building costs. There's no money to be made. You're not gonna feed your family very
I
well.
think Hampton, if I remember right, came 250,000 under budget. I think they utilized that for security, hardware or something that had been cut out, if I remember correctly.
What was the total cost of that project, $10 million.
Was that, is that a design build or?
Yes.
I one thing that I put Jonathan notes on here is some grants I know want it to be competitively bid. So, like if you do SRF money, it's got to be competitively bid. So I don't know what kind of grants we're going to get if they're going to be looking for that as an element of what it is. And, I look at, I've done water wastewater plants, so they're very complex. And I look at this as it's just not a complex project. And having done design bid build, because most of them are public projects versus design build, where it ends up happening where the change orders seem to always come from is design bid is the owner saying, well, I didn't know this finish was going to be this. I didn't know this was going to be this. I'd like it to be this. So, okay, let's add some money in. Where if you go through a full, pretty like 90% design, the owner knows everything. So the owner doesn't come back later and say, I really thought it was going to be this. And just not being a complex project, I just, you're only going to have like 8 finishes. So, so you need I don't see why there would be that much. There's more competitiveness if it went out to bid. And like, value engineering, you can do value engineering on a design bid build. We always were required under SRF money to do value engineering, and they're, very worthwhile. The other thing I don't see in here is like an owner's rep. Who would be the owner's rep? You would think it'd be this committee, or do we go out and get an owner's rep to kind of our, professional eyes on the whole project? So that's where if you had a design bid build, you got the architect involved in it, competing. And I'm not a fan of change orders, and I always see that you have errors and omissions insurance if you messed up big time as an architect engineer. That's happened to me before. In like dirt work, it's just not, you're going to do a few borings, you got to know what's in the ground. So I don't think there's a lot of unforeseen in the ground. So it's just kind of, I think we as a committee need to go and talk to other projects and see what the costs were, how did it work out? And I did a lot of design build, and a lot of them aren't adversarial. I mean, and sometimes you get a contractor, you just wouldn't accept it. You could put it that we don't have to necessarily accept a low bid. You do an RFQ with a bid, price. And if they don't have the qualifications and the reputation we want, we just want to choose. We always did projects where we started right off at the beginning of the meeting, the owner, the contractor, and the engineer, how we all going to work together. You're here to make money. We want a good project. We have, as an engineer, we had a reputation to make. So I haven't heard of a lot of them that get very adversarial. That you work that out.
That was
That's kind of my thoughts on the whole thing.
And when Rye had theirs done 20 years ago, and there were a lot of problems. It was low bid, and they had significant problems because it was low bid, and it was adversarial. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. And if there are savings with that other process, the town doesn't see that. It goes to the contractors, correct?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would argue it is a somewhat complex building, being public safety. You're talking about all the equipment, separating facilities, life safety, and some of the codes. And I think there is some complexity to it. But I mean, as a committee, this is something we can certainly, talk about on the road.
It's actually design bid build.
This was?
Northampton.
Northampton was.
Yeah,
It was design bid build?
yes.
Yes.
But understand, they also had a town manager
Yep.
who every day was basically overseeing that project. This town is not that.
Right. Right.
It's true, and there is value to that, for sure. I mean,
We find owners reps are more on the complex projects that we run into, that the owner really doesn't understand the process and doesn't understand the complexity of his wastewater treatment plant, right? There aren't a lot of people in town probably understand that, but we find that it's again on a CM process and a design build process, you're really representing the owner more than you're representing your subcontractors. On the design bid build, you're strictly
right, do the job.
There are pluses and minuses to all, and it really comes down to control that you want on the project. The process of reviewing your drawings shouldn't be any different on any of those processes. You should understand exactly, this is what I'm getting, and usually, it's sitting down flipping the pages of the drawings and going through it with you, making sure that, you know, yeah, I want tile in my bathroom. I don't want FRP on the walls. You know, there's certain things that you gotta understand that you're getting and that you want. And you need to almost lay that out in front. So there's an understanding of the architect going forward that he understands, you know, once you get the floor plan laid out, okay, what are we doing for finishes in each one of these rooms? So you should go through it. A lot of times they'll even, you know, put like sticky notes on each page and understand how it goes. But again, it shouldn't come as a surprise that you're getting something less than what you wanted. Right.
You know, and I think that's,
It relies on you to understand it, to understand what you are getting.
and I think that's what the committee should be, as we go around to these different sites is, you know, Jeff looks at it and says, I want tile and, you know, this is, you know, okay with me. You know, chief does the same thing. And then, yeah, then you look at the cost. Well, tile, because knows a lot more. You know, where do we need to start cutting? But if, you know, I've clients who come to you with, you know, a binder like this is what we want. You know, this is it, you design it, you know, in the whole process engineering part of it, that's, you know, that's what we're, you know, as an engineer, we would have to figure out, but you have a client who knows what they want, you know, and they know, you know, what's excessive and what isn't, what the public's, you know, going to pay for and, you know, like or not like.
I spoke with the Enfield chief and I did, and with his project that just opened, they hired a comptroller to manage the project for them. They're in a similar position as us. They don't have the staff to manage the project for them. So they had hired somebody else to act and kind of keep an eye on things.
What process did they use?
Design build.
Design build? Anybody else have any questions for Peter and Ben?
Appreciate you guys coming out.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very
Yeah.
much for
From the public,
taking the time and
Michael or Macy?
Obviously, you don't have a fast answer to this, but on a square foot basis, typically this complex costs 200, like that, 500, 800.
Your later numbers are more, you know, you have very expensive space, dude. Other than the space where the trucks are gonna park, everything else is expensive that you have in these facilities. You know, you get a control room, right? So for you guys, so, you know, those are very expensive spaces, so.
I would say half the building's gonna be open. The Bay areas,
Yeah, right, that's what I'm saying, where the trucks park, that's the least expensive, but then as soon as you get away from that, right? Do you actually, so it's a volunteer fire department, right?
currently, but that's part of this process. We're trying, you know, we don't know how long Newfields is going to be able to continue with a volunteer. I mean, it, you know, may be something, we have a potential for some, you know, development that may ramp up our population a little bit. If those things happen, facing change. So we're trying to get ahead of it by doing what we're doing, getting together and getting some plans in place and just, you know, starting this fall, you know, rolling.
So that once it becomes out of volunteer, you got people sort of living there, right?
Correct. Yes.
You're looking for 50 to 100 years, okay? And I can guarantee you, this is not going to be a volunteer department. That's what I've seen for a change in 30 years. You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it all has to be finished space. It just needs to be there and available.
Right, so you may end up with some vacant space. It'll get filled with something.
Yeah.
And when it's time to. So I have a question for you. I owned, Mr. Chick's, house, down at 230 Piscasset Road. Top of my barn is a fireman. On top of that barn. Is he involved with the fire department? I'm guessing.
Notice the
Yeah.
name on the building.
Him or is that his?
Bill was a fireman though for
What's on
a
top of
number
it?
of years.
Weathervane has a fireman.
Yeah.
And a fireman on top. So,
Ernest, his father was,
It was cheaper about 9 years, I believe it was.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Part of the founding families, along with my grandfather and, yeah, grandfather, yeah. So it's a few other people, the Monahans and, yeah, it's a lot of hit, yeah, Knipstein, yeah,
Smith.
Smith. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
again.
all right.
Thank you.
The PD was all people from the community that had badge. I still have my grandfather's badge. from the
Oh,
years.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's like vigilantes or what?
Oh, no, they just would like deputize to be, yeah, to be the law
If you
enforcement.
was a Cerberus on Saturday night, you got the badge, right?
Very much, guys. Really appreciate
The good old days.
you. All right, any other questions? That subject before we move on to?
I think there's a lot to think about there. I mean, you know, there's no doubt in my mind that if we didn't choose to go with design build, we're gonna need a lot more upfront money.
Essentially.
Yeah, I think you're gonna need a lot. I don't think it's even potential. I think it is because, you know, you gotta hire a civil and an architect. They don't have any stake in the whole project. They have this and they have this. I'm not campaigning for either way. Okay, I'm just saying. But I don't like the idea of, you know, if you go with design build, you get tied into that one. You know what I mean? I agree with Bill saying it's not a complex compared to what's out there. I mean, you know, we're not a, you know, not a biotech firm or anything like that where everything's, you know, the heating, ventilation, all that stuff. So I would agree that it's not a high tech, you know, but you see a lot of cases like, you know, even though the town doesn't need to take a low bid, you get low bid. And I agree, you know, I know Northampton came under, they got a beautiful building, but they had a lot of problems. I mean, I saw problems when we walked in, you know, and you're gonna get that with any. They had
Who's
a
responsible
fix.
for the problem? Did the
When a
contractor,
door doesn't open, it don't open, you know?
did the contractor go back and fix it?
Well, I think they did eventually, but I think they had to fight. Get it. But you see that with all projects, not,
Well, I agree with that. I mean,
I think Bill's point was well made, though. I deal with a lot of municipalities and in my work and almost always there's a clause for not having to take the lowest number.
right.
The state of New Hampshire, unfortunately, is the only one that I know of that they take the low number no matter what. Like, it just doesn't matter.
No, and I'm just saying
It's happened, yeah. I mean, it's just, they'll even change up, like, they'll take, if they ask for something that's green and they get yellow and yellow's cheaper, they say, okay, we'll take yellow. I mean, it's just,
No, I think you gotta look at it all ways, you know, if, I kind of like to say it, you know, come out and says, well, you know, at $10,000 or $15,000, we can get you some preliminary sketches to go to the town. I'd be very surprised if we could get that, you know, from, maybe we can, Brian, I don't know. We'd have to look at it, you know?
I know, Wayne, you mentioned kind of early on, talking about this whole process, you know, there might be some opportunities to work with like UNH or maybe, you know,
I know Brentwood used Norwich University. Now, I don't know if that was completely, they had three different design options. One was an addition to the town hall, one was a new police station, and I think one was accommodation town. I think it was three. I don't know if it's going to tax to the voters this March in Brentwood, but I do know Norwich was involved with that.
that was a,
It's something that we could look into,
Yeah.
see, even UNH potentially, one thing we need to come down is like, this whole design build, like space needs and stuff like that, because the first question is, how much space do you need? Okay, I mean, you're gonna take the fire chief or the police chiefs, I mean, to a point, and we have an idea. I mean, we know what the Sally ports for the fire trucks and stuff like that. We have preliminary, and stuff like that, but that is definitely an avenue that we could look at, such as Norwich, as well as maybe even University of New Hampshire.
What about the idea of just buying or borrowing the plans from a town that just completed the same project, like Jackson or someone that has enough similarities that
I believe Jackson is a fire department only.
Zenfield?
We did see Bristol went, if you look at Bristol, they built a 20,000 square foot building, public safety building, and they used some type of construction material that saved the money. And I think the whole project was at 4 or below 4 million for a 20,000 square foot building. Now granted, that was about 2 years ago. So with inflation and stuff like that, reasonable, a lot cheaper than Infield, who just built a 15,000 square foot.
For the infants, I think 17,000. Fire and safety.
Yeah.
No, they're, what,
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Double check on me, but I thought they were about 17,500.
No,
Was that?
it was 26. I was 26, but I don't know. I mean, we've been looking at so many different plans.
Is it possible to start like a spreadsheet and, infield, three fire trucks, just going across, and then here's the square footage in here.
that's what I started here, making some bullet points.
Yeah, I think that.
got to find those common threads
Yeah.
that you can apply and save the architect. You're not reinventing the wheel.
All 15.
Yeah.
I think it'd probably be close to, apparatus space takes up a lot of space.
You guys are talking.
3 or 4 acres if we can put it together.
Say what?
3 or 4 acres of land if we can put it together somewhere.
Well, again, that's something we gotta look at too, because the tough of the site, is it, you always say, well, we don't wanna go up. We don't wanna go up because you gotta add an elevator, you gotta do this, but again, sometimes it costs. You can add just as much by adding 50 feet of foundation and drainage and blah, 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 and everything else to it, so you gotta look at it both ways. Ideally, you like to stay one floor. But again, it depends on the site.
I think, the other thing is future. So, where do you just, okay, here's a footprint of 15,000 square feet, that's my future, pretty much, and this is what's going to be in it. And the utilities are sized to meet something in the future, so you're not digging stuff up or breaking concrete later. But we got to know what's the future. That's got to be thought in
The
there.
crystal ball.
No,
Okay.
One thing, again, you might want to think about is, assuming you do get a piece of land where you can do all one story, but you know that over time you're going to need to do additional development. You over-engineer the first floor so that you could actually just take the top off and put a second story on future needs, which may in the long run, maybe, yeah, you're gonna pay more for over-engineering something that can handle a second story. Jack can probably tell me if I'm like, if my hair's on fire here.
No,
But like I did that with my kitchen building, because we thought we were gonna go vertical. So we over-engineered and overbuilt that bump out. I never did it because we ended up doing the whole L. But, the whole thought was at a future point in time, we put a second story on there. It just, if you're thinking about, hey, we want to build something that we can actually, we don't have to do it all at once, that might be a great thing to do.
So I started this breakdown, just really bullet points for each, like comparable, public safety building. I'll continue to do that and I'll get out to the committee, but I just did Bristol and Field here, but I'll do Northampton and some other,
send that out.
buildings I've seen.
Follow up with what Bill just said here. In that last meeting, I was tasked with doing some of this research to where some other towns are at. And good news is everybody struggled along just like we are. And Bill's got some end results. I've got some that They are still in the process. I can start with a local example. That's Candia. Candia started their process almost 6 years ago. But the reason it was coming off pretty well, they were doing the same exact thing. They named they put a figure on some money to start, as we've been, advised to do. And they went before their voters, they approved so much money and things were happening. But then there was a leadership changes because there was a police chief that was leaving, so a new police chief came in. And then he was trying to get everything's done so that their focus gets shifted. And now a fire chief left, and so now the fire chiefs, now the year and a half old police chief and the new fire chief are now working together and bringing this back, and they're getting it going again. But where they left off is they actually were working with the construction company. And it seems as that the two examples that I have, that's what they did early on. They worked with the construction company to walk them through this process. This was so educational tonight, and so it would be the same type of thing. That's what I found, is that they all did about the same. The construction companies offered the assistance to, everything, right? Exactly what Peter and Ben were explaining to us. The other thing they did too is that they also helped to educate the public. We're getting all these ideas, but then how do we get the message out? The best way to do it. These construction companies have seen it before, so take their advice. I got some of the things. It's all on their site. You mentioned, here's a plan. This is what the Candia Police Department plan looks like. They put together question and answers, for the public. They put this together, all on their site. They have a separate page on their site for their committee, and all of this is there so that they have those questions as they move through the process.
The police and fire?
Excuse me?
The police and fire?
Initially, they were going to do police and fire, and then it went just to police, and now I think it's going to hopefully come back, but they've already got a piece of property. So that was their first step. They identified their property, they were able to purchase the property, and they've got that. And it's a good location, and they're both happy with it. We're talking about some pricing, and this is going back, their last meeting was in 2024. So around that time, they're PD only with a training room, because the training room would then be also a community room. It was 6,400 square feet. At the time, they were predicting 1.2 million at the time. So that's about where they were looking for funding through senators. They're calling US senators. Obviously, things were different then. There was still some ARPA funds that might have been around and all of that. So they were going through all those things. But they did put an interesting thing that they did, once things stalled, or just prior to it stalling, they were putting in a warrant article to the town to put in, they didn't call it a CRF, which is unfortunate. They didn't put it into an actual dedicated fund. But they were getting $100,000 a year. So they have like $400,000 sitting in an account right now. So they have been building it, although the committee has been idle and the whole project is idle. The town is still acknowledging that this needs to be done, and they're building it. So that's where Candy is at. I looked at some other things. The construction company that they used, Plasto, they did theirs 30,000 square feet. That was combined. That was $6.5 million in 2018. That this particular company also did Brookline, New Hampshire in 2013. That was 6,500 square feet, and that was a PD only, and that was 1.2 million. So just to have some idea.
Those were just built.
Yep. The next one I looked at, Plymouth. Plymouth PD, they're, thinking about the town sizes, you've got Candia is, 30 square miles, and you get a population of about 4,000 according to the 2020 census. Whereas, population up in Plymouth, say 6,600 people, and they're 28 square miles. So, obviously bigger communities. I don't know if you've ever been to any of these facilities. I've been to both of these, their current facilities. I've been to Plymouth, and Plymouth is a tough place. They definitely have to move everything. And I also want to say, Brian, don't get excited, because initially, I think, actually it was Candy was looking to also include the DPW in there, but I think it fell apart. So don't get excited.
Only needs a kitchen
Placing trucks in the wall.
You can use part of the combined space.
That's it.
The But Plymouth was doing the same type of deal, and they were doing some things. I hand out some of this stuff here because this is also, great stuff for us to maybe put together. It seems that all the communities are doing, and you just said this, is, this needs assessment for each department. They can do it on their own, but then yes, a company needs to come in and walk with them. So things that they might not think of, so that definitely is a big first step. It seems that everybody doing these needs assessments. The executive summaries are here for both police and fire. Again, it's on their sites, and then they put together a nice PowerPoint. And the one I picked up was the last one here. I printed up so you guys can look at it. And that's the first thing they did is complete a space needs to determine the building size requirements and identify the sites to house a new safety building, which we're doing, rank the sites, which is what we're doing, and then complete your due diligence for the preferred site. Phase one assessment, which construction company help you with the geotechnical evaluation and the environmental assessment. So as I say, it seems like everybody's doing the same thing as we are. Plymouth stalled out as well. I don't know why they did. That also ended in 2024, August of 2024. They actually signed a contract with a company out of Concord, the Turner Group. And the first step that they did was their environmental assessment. And that, at the time, that cost $4,800. So they're pecking away at their number. I think they might have put aside $35,000. Candy initially put aside $64,000. So that's what I found out. I also found out too that there's a little junket somebody wants to go to, but I found out too, if anybody wants to look at, it's called Gordian.com, and that is a huge thing, but it's a great resource to look at in terms of what do you need to do? What are the steps you need to take? From construction procurement, construction cost estimating, facilities planning. It's all right there. I watched a couple of webinars on it and stuff. It's pretty good to know the terminology. A lot like these guys did. They just saved you a lot of time. The other one too, and Bill, this is the one I gave to you, was the architect design group. If you want to do, you already saved it, right?
The link you sent me?
Yeah. There's a seminar in March, 26th to 27th. It's down in Orlando, but I looked at that. I do know that there's an area chief, police chief that's going down to that. That looked really interesting because it's soup to nuts. I mean, there's a list of who should go and topics they'll discuss, but it is literally from locating the site, educating yourselves, educating your public, securing funding, everything is there. So, I certainly don't condone having.
If they could do it as a webinar.
But yeah, right, yeah, what I'm hoping for is if nobody can go to that the chief I've been talking to will bring back all the materials for us.
Now, another thing, the Salem, I read down the.
And
board.
Salem PD.
Salem Fire.
Exactly.
Fire chief.
Yeah, Jeff, you must know, it's down the bottom, Bill. I think keep scrolling all the way, keep going. There you go, on the left.
Fire left. Salem Fire.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, he went to that. Yeah. But yeah,
I said, you guys grew up in Salem.
Lastly, I did look to, Phil, I think it's on the architect, it's on their actual site, not the seminar site, but the architect design group site. I looked at some of the projects that they did. They recently did Wells, Maine. What a beautiful facility that was. But that is quite a bit larger, but that's police, fire, and ambulance. Quite a bit larger, but I thought it was interesting that this large group worked right here in New England. So, yeah, that's some of the research I found out for you.
So we got a fun piece of property.
Well, that's where everybody's got to go.
Probably the hardest. Want to go back to what we have?
Yes.
Biggest thing is, we talked about grants. All the grants came out in the last week. We talked to, Congress office, Papa's office, Senator Hassan's office. We're not there yet because one, we don't have a piece of property. Two, we don't have any designs. We don't even know what we need for square footage at this point. All the deadlines for the grants are either March 1st or March 6th, which is even before our warrant article. So unfortunately, we do not think we're going to be, we don't fit the criteria. That being said, just a week ago, it was announced that Maine, Sanford got $5 million through the congressional grant, and North Berwick got 3.4 or 3.6 million. So there is money out there.
30 million total.
30 million for
30 million for the state of Maine.
state of Maine.
Thank you.
So now we did talk to the infield chief, and there's many other grants where he got too for emergency management, for the generator, for the fire apparatus, for the ventilation system. So we have a list of all those grants that he was successfully applied for. However, we're just not there yet. You know, that's the unfortunate part. We have a list of grants that we can apply for, but we have to get to that next step.
They do that on an annual? Is that how that works?
It's annual. Yep.
So next March is again.
Some of these other grants might be, you know, throughout the year, but most of them, the Congress and stuff, the thing is, they come out right now, we apply, we won't hear until next February. It takes almost, you might get a preliminary phone call in October, but with the government shutdown and stuff like that, everything gets delayed. We applied for this grant several years ago for $30,000 for some equipment. We were granted it, but we didn't get the equipment for almost 2 years. Another department I saw today is a very small town up in northern Cowas County. It's Northumberland. They received 1.1 million from congressional grant back a few years ago, and they received another grant for 200,000. They are still in the process, but they have that money, and I don't know how that works, where if it just sits for a little bit, you have a time frame to pick, you just spend it. Because obviously you have to get it approved by town meeting and stuff like that. So there's a lot of communities, like Tom said, there's a lot of communities that are in our boat are looking at this. The unfortunate part, there's grant money out there. It's just, we just don't fit the criteria right now.
Wait, is there any criteria, you know, because I know we keep on getting nipped because of the wealth of the community.
That was brought up.
So we've reached out, we have good contacts at these representatives' office. We meet the rural, criteria, but you're right. There's certain grants that you have to be within a certain, ratio of the poverty level. So obviously we're going to have a difficult time, checking that box, but there are grants that don't have that. So once we get to that point, they'll be able to guide us to find the right grants to put us in the right position to apply for. Because it's not worth applying for something if there's no chance of us getting it.
It was the safe routes we put in for sidewalks years ago, 5, 10 years. Yeah, they laughed at us. I mean, we even got to we made it 3 tiers to the fine. Everybody's like, yeah, you're gonna get it, you're gonna get it. And then they're like, oh, you guys are too wealthy in that town.
But we did get that other grant, same thing, congressionally directed spending for $30,000. Obviously, we'd be looking for a lot more.
What we saw too with the grant is when municipalities put in for it, the average recipient is receiving about 1 to 1.2 million through Congress from what we saw. Now, granted, that's the average, there can be more. See, Maine's a little different, but from what we was told, the senator that was really pushing that up in Maine was on that committee in Maine, and she really pushed it for those communities.
Let's make sure.
So,
So we're gonna keep it moving because the planning board
Planning board,
coming
yeah.
in here in a short time. Do we want to pick? Well, does anybody else have any other open items to discuss?
I just wanted to see where, Stratum Tire site, is that kind of, anybody?
We'll chat about that
More about it or something later? I don't think.
later.
so.
We'll chat about it.
right, fit on a 91A, right?
Yes, absolutely. Do you want to schedule for the next meeting, Wayne, before we go in?
Want to go in 2 weeks, depending on
Weeks?
the 26th at 5:30 again, just to further discuss. You want to do it in 2 weeks? 26th?
I think I already have that
We already
calendar.
That was discussed last meeting.
Okay, so we're good on the next meeting date. At this time, we do have some discussion for non-public. Need to,
So I'll make a motion to go non-public
Second.
because of whatever.
yep.
You have that RSA 91A,
Anyone a,
particular reason.
I've got it in front of me, but, 91A per, yep, we're gonna go into non-public for, discussion, consideration, what is it? Which line? Tom, help me out here. What do we got? You know,
He.
E is consideration of negotiation of pending claims litigation, or matters relating to or pertaining from the, carrying,
C,
see,
consideration of the acquisition or lease.
yeah,
E.
there you go. So, yeah, enter into 91A, dash A dash column 3, section 2, E.
Motion.
Motion, second. All in favor?
All right.
Right.
1 minute.